All right, everyone, we have Coach Stevens and Coach Rodewald with us from Idaho State University. They've just got in from the field from football practice. Glad for them to be joining us as we add another school to My Momentum Connect. So coaches, I don't want to take too much of the time, so I want you guys to please go ahead and introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about, well, how you got to Idaho State, but also the steps along the way that carried you to where you are right now. So go ahead, Coach Stevens.
Absolutely. Brandon Stevens, I'm Director of Strength and Conditioning here at Idaho State University. I'm actually entering my third year here at ISU, second year as director. First year here, I was actually hired as the assistant director. So previously before Coach Rodewald. And prior to that, I was the head strength and conditioning coach at Western Colorado University in Gunnison, Colorado. Prior to that, I was the first graduate assistant at Western Colorado University. And prior to that, I was volunteer student intern, student assistant, just helping as much as I could. I was a former athlete there, very short-lived career, blew out my shoulder. And, our head football coach, who's still currently there, Jazz Baines, he was just like, hey, man, I need you to stick around. I think you'd be good at coaching. And eventually had to make a decision whether it was football or strength and conditioning I wanted to coach, and decided to go with the strength realm. Thought there'd be a lot more opportunities to work with just a variety of different personalities, athletes, sports, you name it. So, and I'm glad I made that decision.
Yeah, that's awesome. Were you, out of interest, were you the athlete that always loved the weight room, or did you need some encouraging?
No, that was I was the athlete that was always getting kicked out for doing too much. Coach, our strength coach at the time. So before I got hired as the full time, basically every assistant sport coach was designated as the strength coach for their team. And so our D-line coach was my strength coach at the time. And yeah, we had numerous conversations as to why doing too much may not be in my best interest. So
yeah, good man. I actually also read, I think it was a couple of days ago on your bio, really interesting graduate degree, right? High altitude exercise physiology.
Yes, sir.
Interesting. How was that?
It was good. It wasn't necessarily strength and conditioning specific, but our professors at Western were fantastic with like, okay, this is what we're going to teach as far as our curriculum, but we're going to give you the freedom to kind of pursue the areas of interest that you're in. And so actually my thesis, I ended up looking at some block periodization and how, the altitude and environment affected our athletes' performance. So, it was just very interesting to see how that environment and just the altitude itself, played a role in our athletic performance.
Oh, massively. My both my men's and women's lacrosse team are heading out to Denver in a couple of weeks, and that's buckle up and suck it up for the first couple of days that you're there. Yeah, no, the altitude is real. That's great. Good stuff. All right, Coach Rodewald, please go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your previous background before coming to Idaho State.
Absolutely. My name is Brandon Rodewald. Finishing up my first year here at Idaho State University as the assistant, so I'm kind of replacing the footsteps of Coach Stevens here. And actually, my journey throughout all this it kind of follows Coach Stevens' steps as well. So I attended Western Colorado University as an athlete. And I was a track and field athlete there, did the decathlon. And so was an exercise science major, finished up there, didn't really know what I was going to do with it. So I volunteered, interned with strength conditioning. This was right when you were a graduate assistant at that time. So I interned for about a year until they made another position. So I became like the next GA there. I spent a couple of years at Western Colorado University working with the sports there. And then after my 2 years were up there doing the same degree, that high altitude exercise phys, that's when I came over here to Idaho State University. So pretty similar path we took, mine just newer, not quite as much experience there.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. No, it's great. And I actually spoke with some intern coaches just recently about, the interconnectedness of the field and how much network plays a role. And it's kind of one of those buzzwords, right, that gets thrown around the whole time. You need to network, develop your network. But really having a strategy to do that is going to play into your favor just as it has here, because you're going to hire people that you know, trust, and like. Obviously, they have to be good coaches, but it's super important. So now it's really cool to see the interconnectedness there. So then let's talk about Idaho State in terms of the intern coaches that you have there and have had in the past. What's the typical day-to-day look like at Idaho State for those guys?
Yeah, so I mean, as far as the summer goes, it's going to be a little more condensed as far as the amount of hours you're going to put in. Very different from our fall and spring semesters. Fall and spring, it's going to be 5 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. with a session pretty much every hour on the hour. Whereas the summer, we're just going to be focusing on football, men's and women's basketball. So we've got about 5 hours of training actually on the floor. And then, we're getting into some intern development sessions, some chalk talk, going over our articles, podcasts, whatever our assignments are for that day, based on the topics for that week. And then, at the end of the day, there's going to be some time for us to get a lift in, take care of our physical side as well. Typically, the hours are going to be 5 a.m. to about 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then we'll call it a day.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. And obviously having football at Idaho State, I'm sure that plays just like you said, a huge role in the summer and obviously into the competitive season of the fall as well. If there's a young coach who's watching this that has maybe had one experience before with, what you might term the Olympic sports, the non-football sports, but they're interested in Idaho State to come and experience football and also see a little bit more. Because I know we talked offline briefly, football's there in the summer, men's, women's basketball, and potentially volleyball as well. So what does football strength and conditioning look like in the summer in terms of, are you able to get the guys in a larger team setting than you necessarily would in the fall and the spring? What does that look like?
So it's way different than when I first got here, because I got here 2 weeks before COVID, and so that was quite the experience. But as far as moving forward to this summer, we're going to have groups of about between 30 and 40 guys. We'll have 2 sessions, with some speed, agility training prior to our lifting sessions. So about an hour and a half per each session. And again, just large groups, whereas our men's and basketball teams, it's going to be, a group of 15 or less. So you're going to get a little bit more intimate with those Olympic sports, whereas these, with football, it's just going to be tossed into the fire. You're gonna learn how to manage a large group pretty quick.
For sure. I think those are some of the most rewarding experiences. And spoke with her name was Coach Garcia from Barry University, just north of Miami in Florida, just a couple of weeks back, and we were talking about how, not necessarily the smaller schools, but the schools that have a smaller staff to athlete ratio. Sometimes young coaches kind of get turned off of that and think, oh, I want to be around a big staff and all this stuff. But then we got to talking as to, these are the experiences where you're going to get hands-on, super hands-on, thrown into the fire scenarios. And like, that's where the learning occurs. If you've got a huge staff that's able to take care of every detail, then what is left for the intern coach to do other than really just observe? So I think it's great to hear that they get thrown into the fire, because like you say, that's where you step over the comfort line. If you're an introvert, you're going to be extroverted real quick, because you really have to be. Yeah.
Absolutely, especially working with a group like football, where you have some pretty outgoing personalities. If you're introverted, it's not going to last very long, because you're going to have to stand your ground. You're going to have to, as they say, volume reflects confidence, and you're going to need that for the next 9 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, confidence and competence, right? Those are the 2 things that we're really looking to develop in younger coaches, for sure. And yeah, we use an acronym, we call it ACE, which just means acting changes everything. If you're an introvert, and you want to like make an impact, just act like you're an extrovert, and sooner or later you'll kind of become more comfortable in that role. And I think that's great when young coaches move to different places they haven't been before. You can essentially, it's burning day, you can reinvent yourself and become a different person, and that really helps with growth for sure. That's great. So you mentioned it briefly there about the internship curriculum and the things that you might want to help young coaches learn, add value, add strings to their bow. So can you tell us a little bit about your curriculum and the kind of things that you go over when you're talking about Chalk Talk or you're talking about podcasts? Like what kind of things interest you to then pass on to those intern coaches?
Yeah, so the internship program is going to follow kind of like a 3-tiered approach. Since ours is going to run over the course of 9 weeks, we'll spend about 3 weeks really in each section. So the first one will be an introduction to the profession, where we can kind of actually talk about not only what we do here at Idaho State University, but what you can expect to see with strength conditioning, whether it's in the collegiate realm or the private sectors, more your speed, something like that. So trying to give them a general idea of exactly what you can expect or where you want to go with this profession. After that first tier, we move into what we would have our program design, which is pretty standard of what you probably see most internship programs, where we dive into what we use here as far as like our team builder platform, Excel. Then we'll cover anything from periodization, our resistance training, speed and agility work. All that's going to be in that next 3 weeks. So that's kind of our philosophies that we use here, what we like to utilize, what other coaches at other universities might be utilizing. And then finally, we move into a professional development tier with the final tier there. And that's going to be focusing more on getting you prepared for what your next role is going to be. So if you're getting towards the end of the internship program, let's look at your resume, your cover letter, how you can vocalize and look more professional to a strength coach when you're actually applying, trying to get that first full-time position.
Yeah, awesome. It sounds as if by the end of that experience, they not only know the ins and outs of Idaho State's program from like a theoretical and philosophical perspective, but also, obviously what the content is when the pen is put to paper and the sessions happen. But you're absolutely right. You've got to develop those areas of programming, coaching, and then professional development, because the most rewarding part about being an intern coordinator or even just a mentor of young coaches is, seeing them move on, and know that you've had like some kind of hand in that. But touching on resumes and cover letters, we talked about this at the start. In the profession, we typically hire people that we know, trust, and like. That's common. But as much as possible, we want to try and make sure that we can help younger coaches differentiate themselves so that they can almost disrupt that process, that when let's just say like a coach at Louisiana State University posts a job, a new entry-level job for an assistant strength conditioning coach, they think they know that they already have the guy or the girl who they're going to offer the job to, but they've got to post the job anyway, right? And they're going to receive 100 applications for that job. Ideally, we want to disrupt that decision-making process so that when our intern coach's resume lands on the pile and cover letter lands on the pile, they're going to think twice and be like, oh, hold on, this person has got some pretty awesome stuff on their resume and they have value added material. Let's get them on the phone and give them a shot as well. But I think that's important that you guys do that for sure. That's great.
It's funny you mentioned that, just disrupting that process. When I got hired here, Dan Ryan was the director at the time, and believe it or not, like no connection whatsoever between him and I. We had never talked before, we had never met before, and so it was actually kind of a shock to me, because I'd heard these stories of it's not about what you know, it's who you know. And you talked about teaching these interns like how to differentiate yourself, and that's what we try to do here is how do you stand out from the crowd so you can have the opportunity to, like I had to, create a new network and start your journey with a new mentor. So
right, absolutely. And there's a really good segue actually into the former like intern coaches that you've had come through Idaho State. Obviously they moved on to assistant roles and roles in potentially other sectors like private sectors, but they've been able to differentiate themselves to be able to do that. So I wonder if both of you or one of you would like to touch on a couple of those intern coaches that you have listed on your Connect page, what were they like when they were with you, and why do you think that kind of set them up for success?
Yeah, just thinking of two off the top of my head. Melissa McPherson, again, currently at Body Basics in Boise, so private sector, personal trainer. And then Andrew Barrier, he's currently a graduate assistant at University of Montana. Oddly enough, working with Dan Ryan, my former supervisor. So, but what they had that kind of set them up for success, and I think are just great qualities to look for in an intern. Both were very attentive, very engaged. It wasn't just, the fly on the wall approach, which, you understand maybe the first day or two, first week, of being somewhere new. It didn't last very long for them. They were always, pressing the issue like, hey, I'm interested. I want some more. I got a taste, but I'm pretty hungry. They took initiative, so again, always wondering, hey, this is my program for the sport you're currently working with. Could you take a look at it? This is what I was thinking of doing. What's right? What's wrong? Can I take this warm up for today? Can I work with cheer for today? Or, whatever, small group to kind of dip their toes in. Mm-hmm. They just showed they wanted to be around. So obviously, you go on any job posting, whether it's My Momentum, Indeed, some of them list the hours, 30, 40, whatever. These two were there longer than that. They showed they want to, be a part of the grind, be around that. They showed face, which was really impressive for me.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's great to hear. You can't teach motivation and passion. That's something that has to come with the package. Obviously, you can find ways to light the fire a little bit more aggressively here and there, but it's good to hear. Yeah, the detail orientation, the ability to want to be in the room and make the most of it is super, super important. And I think it makes our lives not necessarily easier, but it makes us want to invest in that individual if you can see that they want to invest in themselves first. So I think that's an important quality to have. That's great. So then looking ahead and moving forward, obviously this being the first semester that Idaho State's on the Connect platform, you guys are looking for intern coaches for the summer, but even in the future for the fall and the winter and spring semesters, what are you looking for in terms of incoming intern coaches who might be looking at a internship at Idaho State? Any kind of skill sets and or characteristics that would stand out to you in an application?
Yeah, so I think initially, like right off the top of my head, what comes to mind is someone that's eager to learn. So when that cover letter comes out, what are you looking to get out of this internship, and how do you conduct yourself professionally? That's what the first thing we're going to look at is. Those things are going to go a long way because it's kind of your first impression as you want to be an intern here. As far as like what skill sets they can bring, I think, looking at someone's resume, if they have some sort of experience already, what is it that they've done? Can that be something that's going to be beneficial to us as well? Maybe it's something we don't necessarily have as much experience with here at Idaho State University. So that stuff's going to stick out, like having some sort of background where you've already been working with athletics. That stuff's going to be important. But really, I think it's going to be what we're looking for is someone that is excited to be here, wants to be here, wants to have the opportunity to try and get better, become a better professional, and learn. And that's the biggest thing we're going to be looking for, at least in my opinion. What about you, Coach?
Yeah, no, Pocatello, Idaho, most people never have heard of it before, so it's, it takes a special person. I mean, you're in the middle of the mountains. It can get cold in the summertime, at least up until 9-10 a.m. and then it'll get a little bit warm. So like Coach said, we just want someone who's eager to learn and just wants to be here, and wants to think of themselves as part of our staff.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And as we mentioned before, the opportunity at Idaho State is to become integrated in the coaching process much sooner than you may find elsewhere, necessarily a big Power 5 school. And maybe not, who knows, in terms of those other big Power 5 schools, but it's pretty clear that you guys are looking to involve intern coaches and asking them to become part of the staff essentially as soon as they show that they can do it, you know. So I think that's great, and that's exactly what young coaches should look for and should aspire to be. You know, step into the shoes of an assistant prior to even being offered that job, and sooner or later that'll come around for you. So that's great. Perfect.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, obviously anyone who's watching this video on the Connect page or on YouTube can find the details about the current semester's internship postings below, with application material listed towards the bottom of the page. Obviously, if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to Coach Stevens or Coach Rodewald about the experience there, and I'm sure they'd be happy to answer. But otherwise, pay attention to the deadlines. Make sure you get your application material in as listed by those times, and I'm sure these guys will be very interested to hear what young coaches are looking to learn and have to offer at Idaho State. That's great. Well, coaches, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it, and we'll be in touch soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.